So, welcome to Örgryte New Church and the North Human Baroque organ and our exploration of its possibilities for manuals and pedal. All the sounds of the North Human organ tradition as it was developed by Arp Schnitger. And in the year 1693, he completed the large organ for Jacobi Church in Hamburg. And at that time there was a relatively young musician with his family that moved to Hamburg, Georg Böhm, who was among the admirers and the privileged players of this instrument. He must have worked as assistant organist in Jacobi. He was involved in the opera. So I'm going to play one of his chorale partitas. The partitas are actually the pinnacle of variations of the variation works of the North Human tradition. Wonderful compositions, refined, wonderful voice leading and figurations and beautiful character. With Matthias Weckman's organ music, we know for some chorale verses the exact registrations. For the music of Böhm, we have no idea. We just know that he must have been inspired. He must have played. He lived the sounds of the large city organs. He later then became the organist in Lüneburg. But now, at this time, 1693, Jacobi, which is the model, the sound model for this instrument. He must have explored the sounds of that organ. And let's do that. If we start playing the first, let's take the main principle, the principle 8 of the rig positive, and just begin. Beautiful, vocal, wonderful. Now I have to play a repeat. So, knowing that in the Baroque you really wanted a variation, you never repeated anything exactly the same way it was presented first. Like you see the key cheeks here. When you make key cheeks for this manual, the pattern is almost the same here, but if you look carefully, you see some small differences. You see the ornament here, for example, and the ornament here. So it provides the idea of similarity. But inherent in its shape, you always have a dimension of variation. So I would play on a similar sound. And you see, the interesting thing in this soundscape is that in these 4 divisions, you almost always find not only principal sound, which is the basis, principle 8 in all manuals, but also other similar sounds. So that is something we will use and think about. So now I could play on the principle 8 of the Hauptwerk. Beautiful principal sound, and maybe if I continue, I would like to use the principle of the Oberwerk. Why not? And maybe the principle of the Brustwerk, which is a wooden stop, soft, sweet. For the last phrase. So we have 4 principal 8 sounds. Different character. So it is the same registration, the same sound, but varied. And I can work with these 4 sounds. Now, I could do the same with the flute stops. The Getakt of the rig positive, the Spitzflute 8 of the Hauptwerk, and either the Rohrflute 8, there are 2 8-foot flutes of the Oberwerk, or the wooden stop, the tapered wooden stop in Fritsche style, whole flute 8. different flute sounds, right? So of course I can change it, but an idea that came to my mind now is I can also maybe play the melody on one manual and the accompaniment on another. So for example, start here on the Oberwerk. And then maybe in the repeat play the solo on the Repositiv with the accompaniment of the Brustwerk, which is softer. And now I have a problem. Well, if I take the octave 8 of the pedal, I can easily make the cadence at the end and reach all notes with the solo at the top. So to play one presentation on a solo with accompaniment and the next one with the remaining two manuals, similar sounds, that's something that the instrument actually, when you experiment a while, inspires you to do. Now, when we come to the next variation, we see ta 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 tam ti 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 tim, a little motive ti 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 tim that Böhm uses as the figure, and it goes down, so we cannot hear. It's not clear when we play on just a Gedacht, so we need to have at least the Gedacht and the 4-foot flute. So the 8 and 4 flutes. So for example, like this. And maybe we repeat on the Oberwerk. Or in the Brustwerk, sorry. So 8/4 flute sounds in all divisions. In Hauptwerk we only have the 8-foot flute here, so there we don't have the similar exact sound. And this is clear enough. So clarity is always something to have in mind with the texture of the music. Now there's one registration that is even more clear for this. If I take, instead of the Gedacht 8 and the Blockflöte 4, I take the Quintadena 8 with the flute 4. The Quintadena gives an edge with the 4-foot, which makes it even more clear. It's a very wonderful stop, and we could use a similar sound. We hear the quint kind of overtone, the first, so we have the octave first and then the fifth. So that is what we hear in the Quintadena enhanced. And we can create that sound with the flute 8, 4, and 3 in the Oberwerk. So like this. Similar sounds, although the stops, the combinations are different, right? And so that is a wonderful registration. And maybe the Oberwerk is a little bit louder, or yeah, a bit balanced, the same character. So that is a wonderful possibility that brings clarity and a little bit sweet Innerlichkeit, Lieblichkeit to the rendering of this variation. Now, if I take the idea to use more than one manual to have a solo, because the figure goes kind of from the bass up and down, you know, so it's like a solo actually, although it's not exactly like that, but I can bring it out that way. So let's see if I take the Quintadene of the Hauptwerk with the 8-foot flute and play an octave higher in the left hand, then I could combine it so that the figuration is with the Nasat registration of the Oberwerk. So let's see, I would do it this way. Start on the Hauptwerk, then an octave higher. similar thing with the quintadena registration of the riposte for the repeat. Just like that, or maybe use the 8/4 of the Brustwerk. Sorry, then I have to start here, of course. So, some possibilities. Now, the next variation is very interesting, completely different. Plays with contrasting small sections. So let's just try it with kind of a string-like, canzona-like registration, gedacht in octave 4 of the Rückpositiv. And we prepare so we have a similar registration, the flute with the octave 4 of the Oberwerk. Beautiful, wonderful. So a little imitation kind of, and then and a solo, and then so it's almost like a concerto, kind of a solo and tutti ensemble, and we can repeat it on the Oberwerk. So it's like small motives, dialogue, rhetorical composition. And why not bring that out a little bit more? So I think I take, instead of the second similar registration in the Oberwerk, I take the flute 8 and the octave 4 of the Hauptwerk to correspond to the Rückpositiv. And then as a kind of solo, I take the flutes 8/4 of the Oberwerk and the Brustwerk. So, and then I start playing Rückpositiv Oberwerk in Dialog, and then I go Hauptwerk, Brustwerk in Dialog. There are so many possibilities, and it is the challenge is to analyze the music and try to see clearly how is it composed, what kind of figures, what kind of elements, and then to see different possibilities to render this so that you have clarity and that you have a character that suits the way of writing, and then that you can do it in a playful way with maybe so much variation that it gets rather challenging for you and for your assistant registrations, but it's a wonderful, playful way of also interpreting the music.